Today on Roll for Crit, we are looking at Barrage Battle from MK Games. This is a two-player, head-to-head, card-based combat game with a dexterity component. So you can see the board here is pretty big.
Yeah.
It takes up most of this table, quite large, and we've got our starting cards set up.
Right, pretty much you start with a castle, a king, and a wizard. You can place them anything where you want as long as the castle is in the first two rows.
You could put your king and wizard anywhere on your half of the board.
Probably not a smart move though, as we'll get to.
So essentially your goal is to destroy the other player's king. Pretty simple, a lot like, chess, or any kind of two-player duel game. Stratego kind of has that. Kill the king, you win. That's it. The castle protects them. The wizard lets you cast spells, and there are lots of other units that can do different things.
This would be like your king, but also you can play them like a knight, an archer, so on and so forth. You'll be playing these, and they'll move around the board to kill things, usually.
Yeah, they all have their own designated movement types that they're allowed to do. Some of them have special rules and abilities. Some of them can move twice in the same turn.
Right. Some of them are melee and range. We'll get to the melee a little bit later.
Right.
Next are spells. You'll be gaining mana in addition to coin to spend, and you use the mana to cast from the spells. However, if your wizard dies, you'll lose the ability to cast spells. So he really is your only spell slinger.
Yes, so he's very important. Very important. Both he and your king serve a very important purpose.
Next up, I don't have any in my hand, but there are more buildings.
Oh yeah, for instance, there's a wall. You can place walls, and these are going to protect people that are behind them.
Yeah, a lot of them will pretty much say any range damage that would be dealt to the thing behind it goes to it instead. The only way to spawn units is around buildings. So that's another good thing about putting buildings around is to make more spawn points.
Yeah, it's kind of like building almost like an RTS where you have your different
barracks,
your spawn
your
points.
Yes.
Yeah, and so as you start out, your board is going to be mostly empty, but you're going to start to build up your battleground in different ways.
Right. Now, when you do a range attack, let's say from Jonathan's End,
that's where things get actually a little bit interesting and a little bit different from your typical strategy game like this.
Right.
So for instance,
let's say you had the archer.
I got this archer. What he does, it tells you what is
some fun units for you to.
Thank you. His attack is 2d4s. So I actually take 2d4 dice, comes with all the different kinds of dice that you need, and throw them from my side of the board to the other side of the board. The only restriction on this is that I have to let go before I leave this row that my unit is in. Otherwise, I can throw it however I want, overhand, underhand, any kind of thing that I need to do. And whatever the die lands on, in this case, nothing.
Right, so
but let's say
it landed like that.
There would be a damage to this unit. Some of them actually have things like critical hits, where if it lands on a certain number, it does double the damage.
Right.
There are melee attackers, so you don't always have to do that.
Right, and the melee, the way they work is, so let's say the knight was taking on the squire, which is usually a d6 as far as we can, for most of them. And you roll it, and as long as it's a certain number above,
in this case, you would be successful.
Right, and some also have critical hits, same thing.
Right. And also, this center section is important because this is no man's land where it's a neutral zone. You cannot be attacked there or attack from there.
Right.
So that's like a safe space.
Right. It's the declared zone where
it's
no war
Sweden.
can happen. Yeah. Another big thing is before every turn you have to make a declaration. What this declaration is in essence describing how many resources you get this turn. You can either be peaceful, in which you get no actions, which is pretty much how you fight or cast spells, but you get 5 gold. You can engage, in which you get 3 of each. It's your middle ground. Or you can go to war, which is 5 actions, no gold.
Yeah, and that can be a big deal too, because depending on your positions, like early on, you're probably going to want to be more peaceful because you're not next to anybody really. But once you have a bunch of units out, you really want those actions to be able to hit your buddy.
Right.
So that is the gist of the game. It's a pretty simple to understand on the surface, because if you've played things I'd say similar to like Summoner Wars. We were talking about Mage Wars a little bit. Things with anything with really combat on a board where you're moving units around, you probably have some idea of what to expect. Where it gets really different is those dexterity attacks.
Right, and the spells do have different effects that involve that. Like one was dropping 2 dice from above a unit to deal damage.
One of them was the player has to close their eyes when they make their throw.
Another is you get to deflect range units for a turn.
Right, with your hand. So.
A lot of interesting ways that it's what really I think that's what makes this game really stand out among them. It's not as much because, I mean, the art's nice and I mean the mechanics are fun, but really it's because when you're thinking range, it's not just okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, he hits.
Right. No, that is absolutely the standout. There are also, you can see the deck here is pretty big.
Oh, and that's the other big deal. This, you share one deck, so...
Right. One deck, you get 10 cards. You always have 10 cards in your hand, actually. You draw up at the end of your turn, or down, as the case may be. And, yeah, you're sharing this deck, so you don't get to pre-make your cards or anything. Whatever you get is determined by chance.
Right.
And there's a lot of cards, but not a ton of units. I mean, types of cards, I should say. So, which I think is good because you will have some idea of what your opponent might have versus what you have, but there's enough cards that you can't be like, oh, I know there's only 6 archers in the deck, so he doesn't have
And because
any
there's
left.
only 20 left in the deck or something, like some...
Right, it's going to be a while before you go through
I mean,
this.
maybe someone can card count, we cannot.
Yeah, of course somebody will be able to out there.
But yeah, even though there is only so few, your hand can vary. Because like one game we played, I had almost, and as I mentioned before, like almost all range units, and then I got nothing but spells. You, on the other hand, got like no spells.
Right, yeah, it's a pretty
But you got a big
different
field.
experience.
So you also had just everything here, and I had like 3 guys, and just like arrow, 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 like just desperately trying to whittle you down, and you were just like, I spawned like 3 more.
Yeah, and I mean, you might, depending on how good you are also with throwing, could change your strategy. If you're just really bad at dexterity games, you might decide, I'm going to go all in on melee and not even worry about that. You could play defensively by putting out a bunch of walls. You could be aggressive and move in really early. There really are a lot of ways that you could tackle it. It almost also has the feel kind of a miniatures game.
Well, I feel like all these do. I mean, we brought up the other 2. It's the same kind of, you have a lot of units and you move them around.
Yeah, I will say the board, when you first set it out, it's somewhat plain looking, but I think it's necessary because you want to be able to tell what's going on with your units, and I actually do like, it does complement the cards well, and once you have it out thematically, it kind of does feel like you have a big open battlefield.
The 2 castles just awkwardly staring at each other.
Yeah.
Apparently our countries both built castles just...
We're real passive-aggressive people.
Yeah.
And the art on the cards is also nice. My main gripe is because there are a bunch of cards, inevitably you're going to get some weird rules questions that come up with exactly how some of their abilities work. Some of that I think could have been clearer on the cards. I recommend we found, because this was actually a Kickstarter originally, if you find their Kickstarter page, we'll link to it. They actually had a tutorial video which was very helpful, and the rule book can kind of be a complement to that, I feel. That's a nice way to go. But otherwise, it is, like we said, it's at its core, it's basically a basic kind of 2-player strategy game with solid mechanics. It's that dexterity thing that brings it up to be something kind of cool and different.
And because you don't have to set up any of the decks and legions beforehand, it's sort of almost nicer to just be like, let's just play it. And you can have some more funnier stories. Like we had one game where I had a knight who he didn't make a single hit.
Yeah, he was the worst knight ever. Also,
but then his squire like just did so much work.
The fact that also it's so easy to set up. I mean, it's literally a deck of cards. There's almost no prep that you need to do. The cleanup is fast. If you want to play another round right after, you can without having to do a whole bunch of reshuffling.
I mean, it depends how long your game. These games could be really quick depending on your moves.
They could go really quick, or in our case, really long.
And that's actually would be my one gripe with this game, is that, let's say I already knew this game. You did not know anything. And if you move your king out from behind your castle, there are damaging spells. So I might be able to kill your king in like turn 2.
Sure. Well, it definitely has...
I feel plenty of games have that. That's not like the worst issue. It's just, if you're playing with someone new, make sure they understand what cards are in here and how to...
Good idea to do like maybe a practice session before you jump into it. Yeah. So Barrage Battle It's pretty cool. You get to chuck dice. There's a bunch of them we didn't even
Depending
see,
on your abilities.
including these weird shaped ones that the javelineers throw, which are pretty awesome. I've never seen a die like that. Have you? You?
I have actually.
Oh well, all right.
Well, I've also seen like a page of someone go through like 1 through 2
all the different...
through like 50, I think, of dice shapes, and it's just like crazy.
You won't get that many, but you will get
No.
a bunch. So we'll have links below where you can find more information and resources for Barrage Battle.
Yeah, if you like the 2 kind of player games, definitely something that brings a little bit different because of the dexterity aspect.
Make sure you have table space. It is a big board.
And also something that, once again, like we said, is a little bit easier if you don't have either the time or money to buy all the different expansion sets to make a bunch of different decks.
Absolutely. Check it out. Also, you can check out more videos and reviews like this one and buy games from us at rollforcrit.com. But until we see you next time, please like and subscribe to this video. I'm Jonathan Estes.
And I'm Will Keeler, and this has been Roll for Crit.